Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for being here at the Tenderloin Community School in the heart of this extraordinary neighborhood and district. We've heard from so many of you in terms of the priorities that you've brought before us that we can have a discussion about this evening. But before we do, we want to make sure that we recognize so many of the departments who are here today as well. Department of Aging and Adult Services, Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing, and Department of Human Resources who are here today. And I want to thank them for being here to share with us all of the resources that we have available to deal with some of the most pressing issues in our city. But now to kick us off, on this a beautiful occasion for us to discuss these priorities is our mayor of the city and county of San Francisco, Mayor London N. Breed.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Today really is about a listening session, and so I just want to take this opportunity to also thank your supervisor, Matt Haney, for joining us here today. And so many of the community members in the Tenderloin, whether you live in the Tenderloin or work in the Tenderloin or in District 6, the whole point of today is to just have a discussion. Some of you have probably seen me out in the streets. I come to the Tenderloin quite frequently, and I know that it's a very challenging situation that's going on out there. I'm really frustrated by what I see, and oftentimes we see some of the kind of negative activity, but we also have a great community there. And I just want to acknowledge so many of the community-based organizations. Because of your hard work, we've been able to get almost 1,200 people off the streets who were formerly homeless citywide. And we want to thank you for that work. Last year, you saw large tent encampments all over the city, and this year we don't see those large tent encampments like we have in the past, and so I want to thank you again for your work and your service. We've increased the beat officers in the Tenderloin and South of Market area in particular by over 50%, and as we add more officers to the department, our plan is to make sure that they are in the areas where they're needed the most to ensure public safety. We know we have a long way to go. The problems that exist in the community have existed for so many years, and I know you feel like your community has been neglected. And I'm here to tell you that I probably spend more time in your community trying to address the problems, making more investments, and doing everything we can so that you know at City Hall you have a voice. We're going to make even more investments, and we're going to continue to engage in these kinds of conversations. And you know what? We have to do better for you. That is why we are here tonight, to talk about what doing better means. We know we have to make a change. We know that in the Tenderloin in particular, there are so many kids who are in that community. There are so many seniors. And I've had conversations with some of those seniors who are just hanging out in front of where they live, and you see someone throw something on the ground or urinate on the ground or defecate on the ground. That can no longer be tolerated. It's going to take a lot of work to get this community to a place that it deserves to be a clean, green, safe community for each and every one of us. And so let's get started on this conversation. Our goal is to hear from you. And I just want to also say that this is meant to be a safe space for anyone to ask whatever question you want. And also, if you're not comfortable asking a question publicly and you just want to write it down on a card, we'll pass out cards for you to make ask some questions. And finally, if you want to send us an email or have other questions, there are a lot of different folks here who work for the city, and feel free to reach out to any of the people that are behind me. I see one of your captains here who I had the privilege of working with at Northern Station, Captain Joe Engler, and Commander Lazar. And who's the captain of Tenderloin? You're the new captain, right? Fabry, okay. So I hope you see Captain Fabry hanging out in the neighborhood with all of his incredible officers. I know you see the supervisor walking around in his blue suit, checking in with everybody. So let's get the conversation started. Joaquin Torres is going to moderate, and the plan is for us to, again, answer your questions, hear your suggestions of things that you want to see us do better so that we can really begin to implement what you want us to do. And also, let me just say that budget season is coming up at the Board of Supervisors in the city. So this is a chance also to talk about where you want to see more investments, whether it's more pit stops, whether it's more garbage cans, whether it's more beat officers. We want to hear what you believe we need to invest in, and that's what today's town hall is all about. So thank you all for taking your personal time to be with us here tonight.
Fantastic, and thank you so much, Mayor Breed, for kicking us off. Again, there were some of the main subject areas that were brought up in terms of the questions that I'll just kind of list off right now, and I'll lay out some of the framework for how we'll do this evening. But you wrote to us about homelessness, about transportation, about housing, about public safety, and of course about clean and safe streets. And so what we'll do is there are a few questions here, and we have some support staff here who will be walking around with the microphone to take some questions from some of you. And then we'll also be taking some of the questions that were sent to us as well that address some of these and other issues. But before we do so, I want to make sure that we go ahead and recognize this a very nervous but esteemed group that's up here right now joining us, and that is Kelly Kirkpatrick, the Director of the Mayor's Budget Office, Denny Kern, representing the Department of Parks and Recreation, Mohammed Nuru, the Director of Public Works, Ed Reskin, the Director of the Metropolitan Transportation Agency, Dr. Grant Colfax, the head of the Department of Public Health, Jeff Kazitsky, the head of the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing, Chief William Scott, head of the Police Department here, Sandra Zuniga, the head of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services and the Fix-It team, hard at work on the ground, Joshua Arce, the Director of Workforce Development, and of course Kate Hartley, the Director of the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development. So please do give them a round of applause and thank them for being here to help answer these questions. But DeAnthony, I believe we have one of the first questions that we want to have here in this town hall tonight, and if you would go ahead and kick us off.
And we are making an exception here because we have members of the Muslim community who are celebrating Ramadan, so we're going to go with them first.
Good evening, and thank you for holding this meeting. I'm asking this question on behalf of the Muslim women that I teach in the Arab Mothers ESL program. So my question is this, and this is a question that they would like someone to respond to. They have lived here for years, and they have observed that in the Tenderloin, there seems to be a policy of concentrating not just drug dealing, but all the other accompanying social problems in the Tenderloin. They can go to other parts of the city, and they don't see this problem at all, or in a very, very small, at a very small level. So their question is, why is it seems to be city policy to concentrate all these problems in one area?
Thank you. Mayor Breed.
Thank you for your question. I wouldn't say that it's city policy. I grew up in San Francisco, not too far from here, and what we knew growing up is even back then, San Francisco is a very expensive city, and some of the most inexpensive places to live were in the Tenderloin. Oftentimes, and so many people in some of the single-room occupancy hotels, which are now used for housing, where you share bathrooms and a number of other things, those apartments were a lot less expensive, sadly, than any place else in San Francisco. I think that to be clear, it's not a city policy. It just so happens that, there were a number of services and other programs that emerged out of the Tenderloin. I mean, in fact, what Glide does and how they represent the people in this community, they've been doing since, I want to say, before I was born. They were a place that you could go to when you were in trouble. And I think it's been like that for so many years. And I think that it's important that we change that. And that's really a part of why we're here today, because I know that so many people who live there feel, like, well, why is it just us? And part of what we're trying to do with people who sadly are suffering from mental illness, suffering from substance abuse disorder, I mean, that may be happening more in the Tenderloin community more than any other community, but it's also happening in other places throughout the city as well, just not as prevalent as what we see in this community. And it's part of why we are committing more resources to trying to address the challenges that exist there, whether it's building more affordable housing, investing in social services, and looking at other places citywide to build more housing and build more shelters and do what we can in order to improve the lives of the people all over San Francisco is something that's important. And so it's going to take time. This is not a problem that was created overnight, and it will take some time to really, buckle down and fix it and make it better.
I prefer to speak with my language, Arabic, and I have friend to translate for me. Yeah. The first thing, أول حاجة أنا عايزة أقولها إن أنا حاسة ما فيش احترام لوجودنا كجالية عربية هنا في الاجتماع، لأن النهاردة أول يوم رمضان ومعظمنا كل العائلات موجودة في بيوتها وكله موجود في البيت، لازم يفطر في البيت مع أهله، فمش حاسين باهتمام إن نبقى موجودين إحنا في المكان النهاردة.
My name is Tariq. The first thing I want to say today is that we don't feel a lot of respect or representation coming from the city because today is the first day of Ramadan. And if there was a presentation, like if the city was thinking of us, today would, because it's a very important day for the Muslim community to be with their families on the first day of Ramadan. And so there would have been a lot way more Muslim community, women and men here present today to come here. But these ladies are taking time off out of their day from their cooking and preparing for the iftar, which is going to be at 8:09, to be here just to say this one fast couple of sentences.
يعني واحنا عدد مش قليل، احنا عدد كبير جدا بنعيش هنا في الداون تاون، وكلنا وثقنا فيكي وانتخبناكي على اساس ان انت تسمعي لنا، فبنتمنى ان انت تعملي لنا اجتماع تاني تسمعينا فيه.
So we all voted for you and mobilized for you. So we wish that you make another meeting for us to hear us and listen to our problems.
أنا كأم بعيش هنا في التندرلوين، أنا بحس بعنصرية لا توصف، عنصرية لما أقدم في الهاوزنج ويجي الرانك نمبر بتاعي نمبر 3 وما أفوزش علشان أنا عربية مسلمة ولابسة حجاب، لما أمشي في الشارع بثلاث أطفال 3 كيدز وابقى ماشيه في الشارع وبس اتهاجم علشان بالعنصريه يا مسلمه ويتقال لي افورد عشان انا عنصريه عشان انا مسلمه وماشيه بحجاب، فانا مش حاسه ان انا عايشه في دولة ديمقراطية أعرف أمارس فيها حقوقي. فلو سمحتي إحنا عايزين تبصي للجالية العربية المسلمة شوية أكتر من كده.
So as a Muslim mother who lives in the Tenderloin, walks around in the streets with her kids, getting harassed, getting racial slurs and Islamophobic slurs all the time, getting hit on the head, getting her hijab removed, not just her, many other women here in the Tenderloin, San Francisco, 2019. What else am I missing? Yeah, so, by the way, my name is Tariq Samman. I am with the Arab Resource and Organizing Center. And recently we did a listening session to our communities, and we heard a lot of concern, a lot of racism and Islamophobic attacks here in San Francisco. And when I apply for things for housing, and stuff, people don't respond to me and give me very late numbers, and because I'm Muslim, I'm wearing
When you
hijab.
apply for what?
Housing.
Uh-huh. I applied already and I win. I win on the lottery by number 3. That's my first time. It's like a golden egg for me. But I feel it's unrespectable and unwelcome because I am Muslim and wearing hijab. That makes me frustrated. Yeah.
Well, let me just say, first of all, I apologize that we unfortunately chose to do this on this particular evening, and you feel that we were disrespecting your community. That was definitely never our intent, and we will do better and try and provide another opportunity so that we can make sure that your voices are heard. And we do understand that you have to leave tonight, and so we will be happy to follow up. I will say that, you know, we have challenges in this city, and unfortunately, a lot of those challenges are concentrated in this particular community, which is why I am really focused and determined to make sure that we invest resources into this community. And I want to be honest about the fact that, you know, oftentimes when I say I want more police officers on the streets, and then I advocate for more police officers in the budget, I also get pushback. And so if we want to add more police officers, I want to make sure that you all let your supervisor and other members of the board know that this is important to you, because we don't have enough beat officers walking the beats in our communities so that people feel safe. And I know that it's not just about police officers, that's just part of it, but the fact is we don't have enough and we need more. As it relates to housing, we have a system, there should not be any discrimination with our system. And so I am happy to follow up and to make sure our team is following up with you to understand the challenge that you're specifically dealing with so that we can make sure that that doesn't continue to be a challenge in the future. And I'm sorry for some of the challenges that you're faced with, but we are here to work with you and figure out what we can do to be supportive. So thank you so much for taking the time to come here today. Is that working?
Good evening, Ms. Mayor and wonderful board up here. So I'm Dale Seymour. I represent leadership in the Tenderloin. Been in the Tenderloin 35 years. I kind of getting to get a feel of it by now. So what I see in the Tenderloin, and I know a little about it, when you, ma'am, and your staff walk through the Tenderloin, certain corners, Turk and Taylor, Leavenworth and Eddy, you see young African-American men and women selling dope. When I walk through those corners, I see young African-American men and women at work. It's the only job they know how to do. That's what they've been passed down from their parents.
There's more than African-American men and women that are out there selling
dope.
dope.
But I'm talking specific corners. I mean, there's the East Tenderloin and the West Tenderloin. And the drug sales are racially polarized in those corners of that area.
Yes.
So what I'm asking is that we advocate for those young men to be out of those corners and get into some of your job programs that you've established.
And thank you, Dale, for your advocacy. And I will tell you that one of the things that, in fact, Josh Arce, the first thing I said to him when he got hired as the new workforce director, I said, Josh, I want you out on those corners where people are selling drugs, and I want you to offer them an alternative because there are so many job opportunities in San Francisco. Yeah. So he, along with a number of his team members who speak Spanish, have gone out there to have the conversations on numerous occasions to make offers. But the reality is, we can't continue to allow what is happening out there to continue to happen. We are prepared to offer alternatives, and we're willing to work with anybody to help even pay them as they go through a training program so that we can get them on the right path. Nothing is more important to me than making sure that all of our residents thrive and that we don't focus on locking people up. That is not the goal. But if people are turning us down as we constantly are out there trying to offer support, maybe not recently, but in the beginning, we were out there on a regular basis, there comes a time where there has to be consequences because of what certain people are doing, sadly, to destroy our communities. We can't allow the rapid drug sales to continue in the way that they have. I mean, even when I was growing up, you could go down to the Tenderloin to sell drugs. That should not be normal. So we can't continue to tolerate that. And so we are here, and you can have those conversations with any of those young men that I know you have conversations with. to let them know that we're here to help. We will meet, Josh will go out there and meet with anybody at any time to figure out what can work for them, because it's not a one-size-fits-all where you have all this one job here, all this. We want to work with people to figure out what makes the most sense, because we want to keep them gainfully employed. And that's a process, that takes time, but they have to meet us halfway as well. We do, but we also need more beat officers as well, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to go ahead and come to one of the questions that we received from Victoria Tedder. I hope I'm pronouncing that last name correct. And the question was, can the city help non-senior people with disabilities by setting aside housing for them?
I think I'll have Kate Hartley answer that question, because she's very familiar with what we do offer in terms of housing opportunities, I'll let Kate answer that question.
Come on up, Kate.
Hi, thank you. The Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development is the place in the city that includes in the housing, the affordable housing that we build, housing specifically for people with disabilities, and it's not just senior housing. So 10% of all the units, all the apartments, the homes that we provide money to build are for people with disabilities. And those homes, we match up people in the lotteries. If you have a disability and you identify in the lottery that you need this housing, you rise to the top and you get matched up with that home where you can live safely and decently. So that we need more, but we do provide in every single building that we sponsor, for which we provide loans, that 10%. It's really vital housing.
Thank you, Kate. I believe we have another question from the audience. It's ready, DeAnthony?
Good evening, Mayor. My name is Curtis Bradford, and I'm the co-chair of the Tenderloin People's Congress. And I'm also a community organizer at TNDC, and my office is right on the corner of Golden Gate and Leavenworth. And a couple of months ago, unfortunately, we were witness to a 58-year-old woman being run down at the intersection, and who sadly didn't make it. And that was the third incident on our corner, like in a 2-month period on that same intersection. Fortunately, we were able to rally and get some changes made on that particular intersection as a reactionary method. But I guess my question is, we know that the Tenderloin is one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the city. I mean, the streets are the most dangerous streets in the city in terms of pedestrian safety. And yet the Tenderloin has historically been like the last neighborhood to receive any of the upgrades and necessary changes to really protect our pedestrians. It's also the homes in the highest density of children and the highest density of seniors. So my question is, what can we, and what is your vision for doing to change the historical inadequacy of resources for the Tenderloin and make improvements to save lives?
Well, I really appreciate your question, because we are not doing fast enough in terms of the changes to our infrastructure. In fact, one of the things that I'm really happy that we did a couple of years ago was change one of the one-way streets to a two-way street, which, you remember that street? It was Eddy, but also there was another one, Ellis? Yes, thank you. And because what we notice, sadly, with one-way streets is you have a significant increase in traffic. And so I think part of it is changing some of the one-way streets from one-way to two-way, looking at four-way stops, looking at changes to the crosswalk, the bub-outs, looking at the infrastructure and how we improve that infrastructure and invest in those intersections where we know there are significant challenges. And we definitely need to do that a lot faster. So Vision Zero, as you know, was a goal of our city, and sadly, we've had at least 11 fatalities due to traffic collisions, unfortunately, and in many cases, those losses of life could have been avoided had we made the kinds of structural changes that we need. And so I am always aggressively pushing the MTA and the Transportation Authority to continue to make the kinds of investments. We've identified the most challenging intersections in our city to begin the process of investing to change our infrastructure. And then, of course, you get the complaints around congestion, and I know we have work to do there, but the fact is public safety has to be the most important thing, and that also includes holding people accountable who are basically, there's bad behavior out there with people who sometimes are driving or riding their bikes or what have you, and so part of the goal is we want to make sure everybody is safe. That's what this is all about. So I think citations are an important part of addressing these issues as well, and we have stepped up a lot of enforcement in those areas that are really challenging, but infrastructure improvements are going to be critical to public safety, and we will continue to make more investments, and I will identify what's going on with the Tenderloin and why are we moving so slow in the process to really focus on that particular neighborhood.
Thank you, Mayor Breed. Emma, do we have another question from the audience?
Oh, you want to hold it? Okay, great. My name is Nicole Cunningham, and I actually sent in 2 questions via email, but I'm going to ask for one right now. But I first want to just say thank you. Thank you for being here for like this year and a half and taking on all these challenges. This is not a 2-year-old issue. This is decades of homelessness. We have years of, affordable housing issues. So thank you for taking them all on at one time. So I want to commend you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
The other thing is explain affordable housing. Like, how does that, I hear that all the time, but what is the numbers that's related to that? Is that anyone living in San Francisco with 12,000 income versus 300,000? What does that mean?
You know, it's so much more complicated than it used to be. And I think that's why it's been so much harder for people who especially grow up in this city to even access it in the first place. And that's been really my frustration. When we talk about, for example, the significant decline of the African American community in San Francisco, and we look at the changes to our laws that have made it more difficult for people to access housing, we have just really, I think, layered bureaucracy like never before onto housing to a point where we've changed the fabric of our city. And so part of, it's different things for different projects. And we've made some changes to our affordable housing laws. Like for example, with public housing, it's a specific, maximum amount of income. With some of the affordable housing HUD, there's like certain federal laws that apply to public and some of the HUD units. And then with our inclusionary housing, we're able to be more flexible. So we increase the amount that someone makes that doesn't fit within the category, because I'm sure you're aware sometimes you make a little bit too much for affordable housing, but not enough to afford market rate in San Francisco. And so one of the things that we did, I think about 2 years ago, we changed some of the inclusionary housing laws. So for example, a family of 4 making up to somewhere around 132,000 could potentially qualify for affordable housing. So it just really depends on the project, but we need more housing. We need more housing, and I think the biggest problem is we have not built enough affordable housing in this city. And what I'm proposing, for example, a $500 million bond tomorrow, I'm announcing it, and I'm hoping to get support from the board to put this on the ballot, which won't raise property taxes to go to affordable housing in San Francisco, getting rid of the bureaucracy. So when we try to build, for example, even in the Haight, we got a property on Haight and Stanton to build 100% affordable housing, and then you have people who are saying, well, don't build 7, 8 stories because it doesn't fit within the neighborhood. And I think, well, that's probably about 12 units that we could potentially lose. That's 12 families who need that housing. And so part of it is, I am not gonna apologize for my aggressive commitment to changing, the challenges so that we can build more housing faster. So it's full speed ahead. And we hired a new housing delivery director to start delivering those units. We have over 70,000 units in the pipeline. what is taking so long to build 70,000 units? Do you know what that would do for affordability in this city? And I know I'm going off on a tangent away from your question, but the fact is, we need more, and we need more faster because there are too many people waiting on these opportunities. And so I'm committed to making the changes and diversifying what affordable housing means. And finally, it's easier to apply now more than ever. So if you go to the Mayor's Office of Housing website, you can sign up to get alerts. And so these alerts, I get like 2 or 3 a day, and I have like a group of kids. I'm always forwarding. I'm like, here, apply for this, apply for this. It's so, what's the name of that system? Dahlia. It's so much more simple to apply for affordable housing. And I tell people, apply for everything you qualify for. And now we have neighborhood preference. So that was legislation I fought for a couple years ago on the Board of Supervisors. So the good news, District 6, when we build 100% affordable, any affordable housing in your community, 40% through that lottery system go to the people who live in this community first. That wasn't happening in the past. So it's really changing our law so they actually work for the people in these communities. That's really what I'm focused on in terms of affordable housing, making it easier for people to have access to affordable housing, the people we know need it the most.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're going to go to another question. DeAnthony, do you have... DeAnthony, or Emma? Okay, DeAnthony.
We got some.
Yeah, we have some, and we have some other folks in the front too. We want to make sure that folks get to answer their questions as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Karina Mora, and she's gonna help me to translate.
Si quiere hablar en español primero, está bien.
She says she wants me to just say it in English. Okay. So I worry about the safety of our children walking the streets and facing so much danger, infections, drugs, weapons, and even harassment as they walk. I have witnessed numerous times where people in the streets have changed and exposed themselves near after-school programs where children play. I worry about my child being exposed to this at a very young age, and it's horrible to feel helpless over this situation as a parent. How do you think about conquering all this and restoring security to our streets?
So I want to give our police chief a chance to, answer the question and talk about some of the things that we're already implementing as it relates to public safety on our streets. So, Chief, you want to come up here and answer that for us?
Thank you, Mayor. So, a couple of things that we must do. First of all, we have to be out in the community. And the mayor mentioned the increase in our foot patrols, particularly in the Tenderloin, where it's significantly increased. And through Captain Fabry's leadership, those officers have to be out and engaged in the community. Because one thing that we know for sure is that although an officer walking a beat cannot stop everything from occurring, what we see is that it stops a lot of things from occurring. So people just behave better in general when we're around. And it's really not about, as the mayor said, locking everybody up. It's about being engaged and preventing those type of activities from happening in the first place. So in the Tenderloin, we've added a significant amount of foot patrols, as the mayor said, over 53% increase over the last, basically over the last year. And that includes supervision as well. So that's number one. The second thing is to address street behaviors. Everybody that's here seated, all the department heads, we are working together as a team because we are way more effective when we work collaboratively. So a lot of what we see in terms of street behavior, let's say you mentioned somebody exposing themselves in front of your kids. Sometimes that's driven by narcotics, just the mental state of, altered mental state rather. Sometimes it's driven by mental illness. The team that I work with the other department heads, we want to attack this collaboratively and address these issues at their root. Mental illness, it needs to be dealt with, and I know there's some legislation in the pipeline and things like that, but the mayor has made it clear, and I think everybody here on this team has made it clear that the behaviors that we're seeing in the streets are unacceptable, so we have to work together to address them. So working with Dr. Colfax and his team, working with Jeff and his team, Mr. Kaczynski and his team, we have to work together to address these issues. So we are doing that. Commander Lazar is here. He is the department lead for the Healthy Streets Operations Center. And that's just one of many things that we're doing to work together to address these issues. And we're seeing a difference in that. The last thing that I want to talk about is really the investment in the environment. I mean, the changes that are happening in the environment. We mentioned just the environment in terms of the changes in the directions of streets, two-way streets as opposed to one-way streets, the bicycle lanes and things that we're doing to make the streets safer. These are efforts that we have to address together. So collectively, as we do this, we expect it to continue to improve. And we'd like to hear from you and also you all, I mean, particularly in the Tenderloin, because you all are so engaged. And I say this, you'll hear me say this anytime I speak publicly. We have to continue to work together on this. You have to tell us the things that we need to fix. You have to tell us the things that we need to do better. And we need to continue to work toward getting better and making sure that this community is safe for our kids. So that's just a snapshot of what we're doing.
Thank you so much, Chief. I believe this next question that I have here, I'm going to go to one of the cards. I believe it's for Kate Hartley. The Francis Scott Key Teacher Housing was supposed to open in 2022. Now it's 2024, and it took 2 years to file a PPA. I think what the question is really getting at is, how can we speed up a very super slow process? Okay. All right, Mayor Breed.
Let me tell you what you can do. In fact, I signed onto the ballot an ordinance that will rezone all public property throughout San Francisco so that when we are in a situation where the community, for example, Francis Scott Key was closed for years, the community supports 100% teacher housing, we are ready to build 100% teacher housing, but the process is being delayed by 18 additional months just to rezone that property. That's 18 months, that's a 2-year delay. That's why this project is being delayed, and that's why we need to make changes to the zoning of public property throughout San Francisco. So that's an ordinance that's going to be on the ballot to make that change. So when there's an opportunity to build in the future, we can do it. But I want to be clear, this is not about taking all public property and building housing. It doesn't include parks. This is about, a property that's not even being used and can be better used to provide housing. So that is really, another example of how bureaucracy has made it so difficult for us to get much needed affordable housing built in this city.
Thank you, Mayor Breed.
Sorry.
We have a question from the audience. Emma?
Oh, sorry. Hi, my name's Lauren Hall. I've worked in the Tenderloin for about 25 years. First, I want to thank you, Mayor Breed, for coming to our tenant appreciation party last week, or 2 weeks ago. It meant so much to our tenants. You're the first mayor who has ever really demonstrated to the formerly homeless residents that we serve that you are their mayor. And when you said that to them, I felt just the energy in the room totally shift, where people really felt seen by you. So thank you for that. I was a little curious. I've heard a lot about the navigation centers, and I know you really fought hard to have one sited out at the port property. If you can talk a little bit, or maybe this is a question better for Jeff, to how we're going to ensure as a city that folks who get in the navigation centers actually can get exits into permanent housing if that's what they need.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Lauren. As you know, as somebody who's been doing this work for a long time, as have I, that exits to homelessness are a critical part of what we do. In fact, in San Francisco, every week we help 50 people exit homelessness. And tonight, 13,000 homeless and formerly homeless people in San Francisco will either be sheltered or housed by the city and county of San Francisco. But clearly we need to do more. Mayor Breed has directed us to open up 300 new units of permanent supportive housing during the next few months by master leasing or using scattered site housing. And we appreciate the mayor's leadership on that. There's over 1,200 units of what will be nonprofit-built permanent supportive housing. So we're looking at all different types of opportunities, also opening up this month the Bristol Hotel with Tenderloin Housing Clinic with a donation from Lynn and Mark Benioff, and again, the leadership of the mayor to provide housing for people who are living in SROs and are ready to move on to a different type of housing. So we've got a lot going on, but the other area I wanted to emphasize is we need to invest more money in prevention, eviction prevention and homelessness prevention. So even though every week, thank you, Melody. Every week we help about 50 people exit homelessness. But the challenge is every week, on average, there's about 150 newly homeless people in San Francisco. So we're going to be investing more in eviction prevention, in family mediation, in providing one-time support to not only add more housing, we also need to help people who are at risk of becoming homelessness stay in their homes. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. I did want to recognize another department head who I think I see back there, Mary Ellen Carroll from the Department of Emergency Management. Thank you for being with us tonight. There's a seat up here if you'd like to have a seat. DeAnthony, I think you have another question for us.
All right. Hi. Okay. I've been a 11-year resident of the Tenderloin. I want to say thank you so much for coming here tonight and holding this. My neighbors and I, there's about 10 of us here tonight, had recently gone through a pretty bad situation with drug dealers, and we reached out to Supervisor Haney and also Captain Fabry, and I really wanted to say that our situation has vastly improved in the last couple months since we have had their support, and I just wanted to publicly say thank you for what you have done for us. But so now that we have been enjoying a little bit of a reprieve from the drug dealing activities, and we fully support Supervisor Haney's task force that he wanted to put together for open-air drug dealing in the Tenderloin. I almost forgot to say that. That's a big part of the reason I'm here tonight, is to say that. But I also want to know, beyond the drug dealers, the streets are still really filthy. I mean, we've got a lot of different situations to talk about, but I'm very curious to know what's going to be done to help clean up our streets. And I would like to recommend that we have a lot more bathrooms everywhere in the entire city, but everywhere in the Tenderloin, because the fact of the matter is people need bathrooms. So, are we getting more?
Director Nuru, I think that's for you.
Thank you for your question, Mohammed Nuru, Public Works. All the stuff that I'm doing. Okay, Mayor. So, our job is obviously to keep the city clean, and the Tenderloin is one of the toughest areas that we have to clean, and we put a lot of resources, into the Tenderloin. We have several partnerships with the Hunters Point family, with Civic, with the Tenderloin CBD. We support all of them. The first thing in the morning, we clean the Tenderloin. We have 16 block sweepers do over 40 blocks of cleaning in the Tenderloin. We try to wake everybody up. We try to make sure that the streets are clean. Our departments come in and they wash down. You see the flusher coming through the Tenderloin. I mean, if you are in the Tenderloin, by 7, 8 o'clock, everything looks clean. And then a few hours later, you start seeing the decline. Yeah. So with the mayor's leadership, one of the things that we have just started is an afternoon cleaning, because we know towards the afternoon, once the soup kitchens have closed, and everybody goes home, then you have a new type of activity there in the Tenderloin. Yeah. So we have started putting some block sweepers out there. We also have quite a number of steamers who actually go up and down the blocks and wash down many of the alleys. And so that's happening on a constant basis. I mean, we are taking 15,000 calls a month in the department, and we're doing our best to respond to them, as fast as we can. And so, we're working. I think the way we're going to make the difference is by having all of you, first of all, make sure you call. You use the 311 number so that we get the information. And then 2, we need those partnerships. We need to get jobs for many of the people who are standing on the corner. And so we have been hiring from Turk Street, from the Geo House, from many of the nonprofits. We have a very great partnership, because many of the people who are on the street, if they get a job, they can actually change their lives. And we know that. And we know that for sure because of the Pit Stop program that started 2.5 years ago, started by just hiring a lot of those people who are hanging out on the streets, and they've done a good job. We started with 3. We're over 24 now, all over, 24 all over the city. And yes, we're working on more, and that's through the mayor's leadership. And we have heard you from many of the town halls, so we're trying to expand the hours of the people who work in those pit stops. And so we're working closely with Recology to make sure that those garbage cans are picked up as soon as they come out so that they don't get to stay out for extended hours, so that, somebody goes in and just dumps their dives in them and throws everything all over the place. We're trying to narrow, the time that it's out there. So there's a lot of work that's going on here in the Tenderloin. And, we've started this afternoon shift that is really going to make a difference, because towards evening, there's actually not that many services, and the mayor has pointed that out. We need to have those services, and so we have started with a partnership with the civic nonprofit. We have added more bodies in there, and so we're going to try and make sure that everybody who's on the street has a place to go before the end of the evening, so that it's quiet at night, and then in the morning we don't have as much to do. But we're working hard at it, and everybody's being supportive. Everybody behind here, our police department, Jeff, our health department, we're all working together to come in. At the end of the day, we can't allow people to sleep on our streets. It's just not right. And so we're going to do everything we can with the leadership of our mayor to make sure that everybody has a place to go if they're ready to go. Yeah.
Let me just add, we are going to add more pit stops to the Tenderloin because it's necessary, and we are going to extend the hours because that's important as well. And just to be clear, not everyone who unfortunately is homeless are the people responsible for all the trash on the streets. And so part of it is we have to also hold our communities accountable. Because when I'm out there, every time I'm out there, I see someone just tossing something on the ground, or there's a pit stop right here, and the guy is choosing to be out in the open, using the bathroom, out in the open. And, I've had conversations with people, and I grew up in a community that was not a wealthy community, but we took care of the community. My grandmother would make us clean up and pick stuff up and yell at kids all the time. And I'm not saying that you guys yell at kids, but I'm just saying that part of what we have to do is also get back to some basics here. This is our city, these are our communities, and so there are responsibilities to keep them clean. Yes, the city has a role, and we are investing millions of dollars into the power washing, the streets programs. They do an incredible job. I met this guy in the Tenderloin. He's on the poop patrol. He was so proud of his work. He said, I grew up here. I was born and raised here. I'm so happy to have this job. He said, but I get so mad at people because the pit stop's right here. And I said, go use the pit stop. And so part of it is, I'm not saying that that's the only thing. I'm just saying there are a number of issues that we are dealing with as a city that are creating a number of these challenges. And so we're going to continue to invest more and to do our part as a city. And we're hoping that San Franciscans will also do their part and in some instances just put things in the trash and use the pit stops. And our responsibility is to make sure the trash is picked up, that there's more garbage cans, and there's more pit stops for extended hours so people have places to use.
Thank you, Mayor Breed. Another question that came from the audience for cards. As you increase the numbers of beat cops and law enforcement, what are the other kinds of nonviolent, mental health services and community-based policing trainings that can be implemented and that you are implementing? Chief, you want to come on? Dr. Colfax, you want to come up first, and then maybe we have the chief come up after that? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. So with regard to nonviolent interventions around behavioral health services, so I would also include both mental health and substance use treatment, right? So we have a number of crisis intervention teams that are available around the clock with regard to meeting people where they are, whether it's on the street, in a home, other places to provide them the care and to refer them to wraparound services. So really key work that's being done both independently of law enforcement and with law enforcement. We have a number of case managers who go out to follow up and make sure people are linked to care. And if people really are severely disabled and need to go to psych emergency services, we provide the care at Zuckerberg Hospital for folks. And then longer term, I think what's key and is also still needed is we need to build out a better system of care for people who need beds to provide both either the detox or the substance use treatment or the behavioral health services, right? So whether it's going from psych emergency room to subacute beds to community-based residential care, and then most importantly, reuniting them with support systems and with their families so that they can be taken care of. And then also we're building out a more robust prevention system, right? So rather than having somebody on the street who's having a crisis, that person can reach out either to our crisis team, to a healthcare provider, or their family knows who to call so that they can stay in the apartment, their home, their community, and get the care they need before they spiral downward. We're building out the system. We have a lot more work to do. We need to make sure that we truly build a system where every door is the right door for both the individual, the family, and the community. But we are building that out with the support of the mayor. And there's more legislation going forward so that we're able to provide people the care what they need if they're not willing to have the care and we've missed multiple opportunities. So right now, we have a number of folks who are cycling through our system who are simply not able to accept the care voluntarily that we need to provide them. We have lots of interventions, strong interventions that we can provide, and with stronger conservatorship laws, we're gonna be able to make a difference to be able to stabilize that person and reunite that person with his or her family or chosen family or biologic family to get the supports. And I think with the police chief, we are providing collaborative work so that along with law enforcement, that there is as much as possible an option for people to go into voluntary behavioral health or substance use treatment rather than going down a legal course. But if they do go down a legal course, we also provide robust behavioral health services in the jails and upon release. So collaboration with Chief Scott, with other folks at the head of the department with strong backing of the mayor to build a better and more robust system.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Colfax.
And just one other thing that I'll add to Dr. Colfax. So we have a program called the Street Violence Intervention Program, and it started in the mayor's office. And last year, the police department actually took over at least a piece of that. But what it really is about is services to address the many things that go along with violence. When a violent crime occurs, if you're the victim of violent crime, particularly homicide, shootings, and those type of things, this team comes together, and it's a collaborative effort from across the city. Nonprofits and the Department of Public Health is very involved in that. And basically what we do is we try to address some of the things that are associated with violence, the trauma, the wraparound services that are needed when a family suffers a violent crime. And what we have seen, and I strongly believe that this is a reason that our crime rate over time is going down, because you really have to think about the future when you're addressing violence. You know, when a 5-year-old sees, violence in their family, let's say their brother or sister became a victim of a violent crime, that does something. The trauma has a tremendous impact on that child's probably propensity to be involved in violent crime. So the street violence intervention program addresses a lot of those issues, and I think it really makes a difference in terms of the services. And this city is very fortunate that we are forward-thinking in that way, and it really helps in terms of addressing some of the causes of trauma that lead to other things that are not good. So this team with Dr. Colfax and the mayor's leadership, as we said, it really does go to the root causes of violence, and that team is very effective at what they do.
Thank you, Chief Scott. We have time for about 2 or 3 more questions, and so I'm going to take one in the back right now. But there are some of the questions that we've received in terms of individual housing responses, and I want to make sure that some of those get followed up in detail with some of our folks from the Mayor's Office of Housing who are here at tables. So I'm going to take this question in the back, and then we're going to start making our way to some folks in the front as well. Okay? All right. You're very welcome.
Good evening. My name is Misha Olivas with United Players, and I promise that I did not pay the last two speakers to say their comments. But I want to thank you all who are on the stage. I know that you work day in, day out tirelessly to help San Francisco be the best that it can be. I have to shout out Treasure Island. I love the love that the TL is getting in this room, but Treasure Island and SoMa are also a part of D6, and I have to represent SoMa. So, talking about prevention, talking about trauma-informed care, we have one school in SoMa. It's a K-8 school, Bessie Carmichael. We have the highest number of homeless students in the district. We have the least amount of open space in San Francisco. And 85% of our middle schoolers are reading at below or far below basic reading levels. That means that they drop out. If they drop out, they're more likely to become incarcerated, they're more likely to be murdered, they're more likely to become homeless. So we have been so inspired by the dental clinic here at TCS and the change that it has made on the community here. We would love to partner with the city to make Bessie a trauma-informed model as a school with a mental health clinic on site. Our young people see 10 traumatic things on their way to school. This afternoon, my daughter saw a woman dying on Golden Gate in Larkin on her way home from school. That's unacceptable. Our young people are really significantly impacted by what's going on, and I understand that it's a lot of people in crisis, but that crisis is rippling out and causing effects to everyone in the community. And so we would love to partner with DPH. I'm sad that there's not a representative here from the school district because we have one school and we really want to make that school the best school that it can be. And so we would love to partner with you to help give our young people, some of them, their parents are incarcerated, their parents have been murdered, and they need help. And so we can't expect them to be successful in school without dealing with their hearts and what's going on. So we would love to partner with the city and the school district to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. We had some questions up in front. Do we have someone with a microphone? We had a question up front, sir? Okay. I want to make sure our mic folks are, here we go. Thank you. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you so much, Mayor, for being here. Thank you, Captain from Tenderloin being here, and Matt Haney. My question is, I've seen things work here like community ambassadors, which are on the street. I used to live at the Seneca. Now I am a tender rep organizer at the Vincent Hotel. When I used to live in the Seneca, I used to see this young man that worked for the community ambassadors. He would work, he would go call, he would help, he would listen. We need more community ambassadors. We need more community ambassadors in the Tenderloin, but not only in the daytime. We need them in the evening and afternoon because our community is hurting, like we say, we keep saying this. The police captain over there had a town hall, a coffee and greet at the Golden Gate the other day, and he really listened to our complaints. Though it was just a coffee and greet, he was there, his officers were there, and I felt that was a good step forward. And I do see an improvement in our streets. I do see an improvement in the city cleaning up our parking lot areas. But what I don't see is more visibility of community ambassadors that's on the street. And the pit stops, not just open from day and in the evening, but even 24 hours. I have 2 dogs. I walk my dogs at nighttime because they have to go out. You know, dogs go out and we have poop bags and stuff. But I'm scared to go out at night. I'm a senior citizen. I'm a senior. And why I'm scared to go out because I'm scared maybe a drug dealer's going to hit me, kidnap my dogs. But that's the reason I think visibility of community awareness of community ambassadors are so important. And I'd like to see you address that, please.
And thank you for your feedback because we are actually, as we speak, working on a program for ambassadors and to have visibility. In fact, there are, I don't know when the chief is planning to announce it, but there are a number of retired police officers who we are looking at as possible ambassadors to assist in areas where we know there are a number of challenges. Because I do think when you have, it's not about, again, policing. It's about having, eyes and ears on the streets. And that is, for example, someone asking for directions or someone who needs a helping hand or anything at any time. That is really a part of a community, is having people who are kind of out and about, who know the community, who's really looking out for the community. So I do agree that we do need a robust ambassador program that's going to effectively serve the community, and it's something that we actually are working on as we speak. So thank you for your feedback.
Thank you, Mayor Breed. DeAnthony, we have someone over here on this side. And again, everyone, department heads will be able to be here until 8 p.m. tonight to answer any of additional questions. And for those who did write questions down and they were not answered in this evening's forum, they will be followed up on by email and the contact information that you provided so that we can get you that information, okay? So thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Josie. I'm a TL resident. I live on Leavenworth and Geary. I'm out walking around all the time. I walk to work. I walk to the Goodwill. I'm just picking up litter as I go to clean up our community. And I also wanted to mention that I see a lot of empty storefronts in the community. And I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity to open up these storefronts that are empty in the evenings, bring in the homeless, give them a place to sleep that's safe off the sidewalks, and the mental health they need in the nighttime, because we need in the TL homeless advocacy, homeless mental illness, everything 24/7. We appreciate all of your help during the day and the afternoons, but it's a 24-hour situation. And with these empty storefronts, we have opportunities. There's so much space to bring them in off the streets. Thank you.
Thank you. So from the Office of Economic and Workforce Development perspective, the hope from our end is that we can fill those storefronts by easing permitting process, investing in spaces and signage so we can close leases in those spaces as well, to make sure that we have a vibrant environment both day and night. But we can have Director Kozitzki follow up later on this evening with you as well about other ideas in terms of services that can be provided in the evening for those who need them most, or not.
Yeah, just a few comments. First of all, just thank all of you for your kindness and your caring. Sometimes we go to these meetings and we sort of get a different vibe. And I worked here in the neighborhood since 2000. Worked in the Tenderloin before I took this job, and we're actually opening up our offices in the Tenderloin. So I'll be getting to work in the neighborhood again in July. We'll be at 440 Turk Street. So we really appreciate your openness, and we will on the first floor of 440 Turk Street have it's not really a storefront, but a lobby of our office will be a place where people who are experiencing homelessness can come and use the restrooms and talk to a case manager. So we'll be right in the neighborhood with you all. As far as opening up storefronts, I think as Joaquin said, the preference really is to use those as businesses, as they were intended to bring vibrancy into the neighborhood. However, we can take a look at that option. North Beach Citizen is a great model. It's a community-based organization using a storefront in North Beach to provide those kinds of services during the day. So it's certainly something that we can take a look at. But again, really appreciate your openness to those kinds of solutions in the neighborhood.
Great. Thank you, Director Kozitzki. We have time for one last question. And I need to rely on DeAnthony and on Emma to make this last suggestion. So this woman in the front has had her hand up for quite some time.
Hi, my name is Lisa, and I thank you, London Breed and Chief of Police, for being here. I live in an SRO for the last 2.5 years, okay? And day in, day out, I deal with the homeless people defecating, urinating. And one time somebody started a fire and they graffiti on the wall. And not too long ago, somebody just died in front of the building. It was like people were walking by like he was either asleep, passed out, or drunk. No, he died in front of my building. So that took a toll on me. And me going to the stores, like this one store across the street from me, the homeless people coming there cause a lot of chaos, a lot of ruckus. They even urinate and defecate in front of the store. And that's, I mean, it's unbearable, it's intolerable. And then people do drugs right in front of my building, right when kids are going down, and they do not care. What can you do?
Thank you. And I think part of what we talked about today are some of the things that we are trying to implement in order to address these challenges. These are not things that happen overnight. Sadly, this has been occurring for far too long in this particular community, and my plan is to make sure that we are continuing to invest in resources that can help address these challenges. Investing more in the street cleaning programs with power washing to the sidewalks, investing more in public safety, investing more in housing, providing wraparound services. And I think one of the things that we didn't really touch on tonight in any of the questions is the fact that sadly, so many people in the neighborhood are not only suffering from challenges with mental health, but also from substance use disorder. And the fact is, and I want to be honest, because this is about having an honest conversation, we don't have all the tools we need from a legal perspective on a statewide level to address what we know is a mental health crisis. And part of what we're trying to do with our resources is look at changes and making the kinds of reforms necessary to deal with that. And also people who sadly, their psychosis that develops because of their drug use. That's a whole nother conversation. Those are the biggest challenges we face as a city. And those are at the root causes of why so many people are experiencing the challenges they're experiencing, and we're seeing it play out on our streets in the South of Market and the Tenderloin neighborhood. So part of what we are proposing to do, along with changes to our conservatorship laws, so we've added 50 new mental health stabilization beds. We're going to add another 100 this year. But as Dr. Colfax mentioned, we don't have what we need to force someone into treatment. And that is a very controversial thing, because people, of course, are saying we don't want to take away anyone's rights. And I agree. But right now, we have a mental health hospital, and it's called 850 Bryant Street. And people who are suffering from mental illness are cycling in and out of our jails, and that is not a solution. And so part of what we're going to have to do is make some changes, and we are looking at going to the ballot on a statewide level if we can't get the support not only from our legislators in Sacramento, but we're also going to need support from the members of the Board of Supervisors here, because we need to make the changes. We need to make the hard decisions so that we can get people the help and the support that they need. And sadly, that will continue to be a controversial thing, but if we are not prepared to make the hard decisions, the challenges you see will continue to play themselves out. Yes, we can invest more. Yes, we can do more and clean up and provide more housing and all of these other things, but we have a crisis on our hands that needs to be addressed in a different way like never before. I mean, Dr. Colfax was here, and he played an important role in what was happening in the 80s during the AIDS crisis. And the work that was done, the investments made from a medical perspective to help us get to a place, where we're at a point where we are focused on getting to zero, and the fact that we only have a little over 200 new cases of HIV last year demonstrates that we can do it with the right investments. We need to do the same thing with mental health. And so that's what I'm committed to really try and transform the Tenderloin community and our entire city for the better. And so with that, I know our time is kind of running out. Okay. But I appreciate your response, and we are doing everything we can, but there's going to be a lot more that needs to get done, and a lot of that is going to be very controversial, but it's going to be necessary if we're going to have real change.
Thank you. D'Anthony, I think we have one more over here. And then I'm sorry, everyone, we're going to have to close, but we can come around and we'll be available as department heads to answer your questions. Thank you, Mason.
And I'll translate for Ms. Jang. So she has a question. She lives on 80 and Jones Street. and the neighbors think that there are many people, many homeless people, and also the human feces on the street as well. They live right across from the the police station on Eddy Street, and there are outside of the apartment building there are homeless people sleeping. Sometimes there are 3 or 4. In the building, most of the residents are seniors, so and they are always scared. They hope that the police department can actually help these homeless people and to make sure that the street is safe and clean. So the question is to the police department.
Okay.
Chief Scott.
So yes, we are definitely wanting to help individuals that are sleeping on the sidewalks. And it goes back to what was said earlier by the mayor and others that have spoken. We're trying to do this as a team. We're trying to create spaces for people to go. If they're not going to be sleeping on the streets, they have to sleep somewhere. And so while that's being done, we have DPW and Mr. Newell's crew trying to keep the streets clean. And the police department, our role through Captain Fabry and his team in Tenderloin is to really be out there and engage with people and see if we can get them to a better place. And we try to lead, we do lead with services, because we have to have the services in order to get people off of the sidewalk. So everything has to come together, but we're all working hard to do that. And as the mayor said, there's more to come. As Mr. Kaczynski said, there's more to come. So we should be able to do more as we get those services so we can get people off the streets.
Thank you so much, Chief Scott, and thank you everyone for being here this evening. And thank you to Mayor Bree for bringing us all together here in the Tenderloin. Again, if anyone has a question they have not had answered, we will be responding to you via the email that you provided for your questions. And also, we as department heads are here to answer any questions you may have directly. And we want to thank all of you again for being here this evening. So thank you all so much.
SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television.